Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are a subscriber, welcome if you're new. Today I wanted to be giving you all some horror book recommendations. And I have not read in total as many horror books as thriller books, but I did really start getting into them in the past couple of months, and I wanted to share the ones that I've really enjoyed so far. Before I get into the video, I want to say, look at these earrings. They're from the Black Dahlia Designs. She hand makes all her jewelry and it is so gorgeous. They're big, but they're totally lightweight and I absolutely love them. And then my Halloween shirt right here, I found at Walmart for like $7 in the men's section. So I was so happy to find it, and I love this combination as well as the dark lipstick and the dark eyeshadow, which I usually wouldn't do together, but I figured this would be the perfect video to go all out. So I'm feeling in the horror mood. I have always loved horror movies. Well, I started liking them in middle school, and ever since I have loved them. And now I've gotten into horror books. So in no way am I an expert. I am just going to recommend the books that I've read so far that I've really enjoyed to you in this video. So let's kick it off with Riley Sager. And Riley Sager is usually known as a thriller author, but Home Before Dark is definitely more of a horror feeling book. So this book is about a girl named Maggie Holt, and she actually moved into Bainbury Hall when she was a little girl, and something happened in the house that was very paranormal, and their family fled in the middle of the night. And her father actually went on to write a book about his paranormal experiences in the home, but she has always believed that all of the things he wrote in the book were not actually true, and they were just a hoax to make a lot of money. But when her father passes away and she inherits the house, she goes back and she just wants to fix it up and sell it. But she starts wondering if maybe some of the things that her father wrote about in the book were actually true. So it rotates between Maggie's perspective in the present and then her father's book, so chapters from the book. And personally, I absolutely adored this novel. My favorite part of it was reading the chapters in her father's book. And honestly, out of all the books on this list, this was one of them that scared me the most. There was a certain scene that really creeped me out, and I just absolutely loved it. I flew through it. It was such a fun time, and I highly recommend it if this sounds good to you. The next book I want to recommend is The Shining by Stephen King. And I'm assuming most of you know what this is about, but if you don't, this is about Jack Torrance and his family, and he takes them to the Overlook Hotel because he is going to be the hotel sitter for the winter season. And it's a very isolated setting. It's very creepy. I don't want to say much. It is very different than the movie. They're kind of two separate stories, but I still highly recommend reading the book. It has a different ending. It's much more focused on Danny, which I absolutely loved. And I just had a blast reading this. Stephen King is such a talented author, and this has been my favorite book that I've read from him so far. I started with Salem's Lot, then I read The Shining, then I read Misery and Pet Sematary. But I highly recommend The Shining. It's been my favorite so far. So that's the next recommendation. The next book I'm going to recommend is Kill Creek. And I forgot to take it off my bookshelf, but it's right here. And look at these pages. So gorgeous. And I love the cover. This book was not amazing in my opinion, but it had a really, really good atmosphere and the ending was wild. So I still do want to recommend this book to you. I actually did a live show over on Rain's channel, Brews and Vines. I'll put the information in the description below. But we discussed it. It was Rain, me, McKay, and Deja. And it was a really fun time discussing this book. This book is about 4 horror authors who are all very different from one another, but they're invited to spend Halloween night in a haunted house. And it sort of starts as a publicity stunt, but things start happening and all of them start wondering if maybe this house is actually haunted. So I would recommend this book. I know a ton of people absolutely adore it. I didn't adore it, however, there were some really crazy parts in it that I really enjoyed. So I would recommend this. Also, by the way, there are some really gory parts in this that I was not prepared for, and there was one part where I literally was so grossed out. So just be warned. Per usual, look up the trigger warnings for these books if you want to know exactly what's in them that may be triggering for you. I have a database that's always linked in my description, so I just wanted to warn you guys about that. The next book I want to recommend to you is actually a novella, and it's called The Bear Who Wouldn't Leave by J.H. Moncrieff. I think that's how you say the last name. This book is about a little boy who is 10 years old, and he's living with his mother and his new stepfather. But his stepfather gives him this bear, and it's this old creepy bear, and the bear has some issues. Stuff starts happening and it turns really creepy really quickly. So this book is only about 90 pages, and I absolutely loved it. It really creeped me out, and I was reading some of it in the dark, and I genuinely was scared in some parts of it because stuffed animals that are creepy, or dolls, or just anything involved with toys and small children just really freaked me out. So this atmosphere was perfect, and since it was a novella, it was so short that it was pretty much all action, and so it really kept me interested the whole time. I read it on my Kindle. I just got a Kindle Paperwhite. I'm loving it, and I would highly recommend you all check this book out for a fast read. The next book I want to talk about is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia, and I've said this so many times, but this is the most stunning cover ever. This one and Grown, I adore the covers of. But anyway, the actual content of this book is very good as well. So if you don't know, this book is about a young woman named Noemi, and her cousin, who is living in a mansion with her new husband, sends her a letter and says, "Things are scaring me here. I think my husband is trying to poison me." This takes place in 1950s Mexico, and Noemi decides to go visit her cousin and make sure she's okay, but she gets some very creepy vibes when she goes to the house, and it seems like it may be haunted. So I would highly recommend this book. The atmosphere in here was incredible, and just how it was painted in my mind while I was reading was a wonderful experience, because I don't know if I've talked about this on my channel before, but sometimes I have a hard time visualizing things when I'm reading, but I could visualize this very well, and I really enjoyed it. The twist was a little underwhelming, I will say. For me, it was a little bit underwhelming, but I still really enjoyed the overall atmosphere, so I gave it 4 stars. Next book I want to talk about is another shorter book. It's only about 200 pages, and it is The Patient by Jasper DeWitt. And this book is so good. I highly recommend it. This book is about a young psychiatrist who goes to a mental hospital and learns of a patient who was admitted when he was 6 years old for night terrors. But this patient is extremely dangerous. And I don't really want to say anything more about this book except that it was a very, very chilling book to read, and I highly recommend it. I read it on a reading sprint, and it was so fun to read in such a short sitting. And I think you should go into this really blind. I would recommend not even reading the inside cover. When I got this book recommended to me, I really knew nothing about it, honestly. And for most of the books I read, I actually don't even read the inside cover, just because with movies, I don't really watch trailers, and I just like things being vague and being surprised and shocked as best as possible. So I would highly recommend this book. Next book I want to recommend is Bird Box by Josh Malerman. I read this a few years ago. I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago, if I'm remembering right. But I remember really, really loving it. And I did not like the Netflix movie, but the book is spectacular. So this book is about a post-apocalyptic world where there is something out there that if you see it, you will be driven to total violence. And so everyone is dying off when they see whatever it is out there. It's very vague. We never know what it is. And so people are walking around with blindfolds and hiding out in abandoned houses. And we're following Mallory and her 2 children in an abandoned house, and they learn about this safe haven that's down the river a couple miles. But they will have to go there by boat and be blindfolded. It's obviously going to be a very hard journey, and this book is extremely good because the fear of the unknown is so effective, and I think that's why the movie just didn't do it for me, because the movie you could see, right? But the biggest thing in this book is you can't see what it is, and neither can the characters. So you don't know what's going on. And it's just very effective. I really enjoyed this book. And actually, a subscriber just gifted me another book by Josh Bellerman. It's called Unbury Carol, and I'm very, very excited to read this book because I enjoyed Bird Box so much. The next book I want to talk about is Confessions by Kanae Minato, and this is technically a thriller, but I really do think there's some horrifying elements to it, so I do want to keep it in this video. But this is actually the book that Rain, Deja, McKay, and Sarah and I are reading for this month, and we will be discussing it on my channel. I will leave all the information down below. Well, not this month, but in February. So anyway, this book is about a teacher who is having her last day lecturing her class, but unfortunately her daughter has passed away recently, and during the lecture she says, 2 of you students are responsible for killing my daughter. And I don't want to say anything more. I listened to the audiobook. This is such an incredible read. It just had me shook basically the whole time. I listened to it as an audiobook with my husband, and he loved it as well. So I would highly recommend it. And if it's been on your TBR for a while, you should definitely read it, because then you can watch the live show and participate in the discussion. The last book I want to talk about is Salem's Lot by Stephen King. And this was my first Stephen King classic horror novel that I read, actually. I realized earlier I mentioned a bunch of books by Stephen King that I had read this year, but I have read some other Stephen King books before a few years back. Salem's Lot is about Ben, a writer returning to his hometown, and he's going back to write a novel based on his childhood experiences and to learn more about the Marston house. 2 young boys go missing though, and only one returns, and things turn mysterious, and it seems like something more sinister is going on. So this novel is really good. It's a really great mood setting. I read it in October, and it was the perfect time to read it, honestly. But I would highly recommend this novel if you are interested in small town sort of drama and a lot of characters and learning about this whole atmosphere of this town in New England. And there are some genuinely freaky parts. So those are all my recommendations. I hope I introduced you to some new books, or if you've had some of these on your TBR, that you may kick them up and read them. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I will be continuing to read horror and finding scarier and scarier books, fingers crossed. Please let me know in the comments what some of your favorite horror books are, or if you have any recommendations for me. And I hope you're having a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye.